Zoom. Back to Twitch. Bruno, how would you achieve these effects? That sounds like a multi-part one, which is dangerous. Do, 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 do. Oh, goodness. Well, there's a lot going on here. Lots of cool stuff there. Definitely very neat. So this was made by director JL, agency JL Design. No, don't play. Stop. Go back. How do I replay it? Refresh. So there's a lot of different things going on here. Now, first of all, you get this cool little cracking and these tendrils coming out. And then you have this kind of wiggling and touching. And we've talked about some of that recently. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I know we talked about like breaking up some geometry so we could break it apart like that. So that's like one effect. But then we also have these tentacles traveling out, and they don't seem to intersect each other, but they are also changing over time. Like they're growing and bulging, but also moving forward. And that's where that turns into a big old question where I don't know how to do that, because the furthest I can get is like the collision avoidance tutorial that I made. And that would make those tendrils for you really well, where they're not intersecting, but they're not live. They couldn't keep going and traveling that path the way they are. Well, having said that, I wonder if we could. Well, the hairs have to. I have a thought on that, which is I think it'll just be fun to tinker around with. So why don't we do it? So that's all saved. Open a new file. So here's my thought. If we were to take a helix, we've been doing a lot of stuff with kind of strings these days. I'm not sure what it is about strings, but let's try and do this, and we'll keep it relevant. Well, it's probably gonna be kind of complicated, so I won't say let's keep it simple. So we've got this helix string. I don't think we need this many, so I'm gonna say 50 points. And we're probably going to need to make it editable. Maybe. Because we probably need to lock it down. Every time I try and do that, I break it. I don't know why. Well, okay, you guys can just see me fail a bit here. We'll just start experimenting. Branches. We're going to try and make some fancy branches here. So we've got our helix. I'm going to make a duplicate of it, make it editable. And I do want these to be stuck in space. So firstly, I'm going to tell this to be none, no intermediate points, no smoothing, not Bezier, it's linear. Grab this point. Actually, we need to make it dynamic. So I'm going to right click and say simulation tags, a soft body. So now this should be a dynamic soft body. If I play, it should just fall out of scene. So now we need to lock it down. So we need to lock it down by linking it via spring tags. So I'm going to go to simulate dynamic spring, and I need something to link it to. So I'm going to make a little sphere. Scoot it down. Actually, we'll make this one first. So we got our little sphere. We need to make it dynamic. So I'm going to say simulation collider body. Spring should link that sphere to this helix. But it shouldn't be the center of the helix. It should be a polygon point. And it shouldn't be the bottom point. It should be the top one, which means we set the index to -1. So now you see those are linked. I'm going to say set rest length. So now it wants to be that distance. Here's where things always go sideways for me. When I hit play, it's probably going to explode. No, it didn't. Huzzah. All right, cool. So step one. We've got that. So let's copy and paste the spring and the sphere. So now I need to move the sphere down to the bottom. And I want this to indeed be linked to 2.0. Set rest length. Hit play. Okay, not too bad. It's not freaking out. Okay, cool. So that's working fairly well. I'm going to save it as branches 2. We're going to be making a lot of iterations here. Delete that helix. I guess we don't. Well, I'm going to need it. So let's create a null and drop all this into the null. Hit play. Make sure that's still working. It is. Now I'm going to throw this into a cloner, and here's where things get complicated. Radial based on that orientation. And now I'm going to hit play. And what I'm mostly curious about is, are they going to be doing their things individually or are they identical? And it's really, really hard to tell. So what we're going to do is create some turbulence. So I'm going to add in a simulate particle turbulence. Give it a strength of 55 and a scale that's relatively small. I think those will be automatically included. It is, but it's exploding it into space. So maybe this is where things get messed up. A little bit of turbulence. They seem to be... It's really, really hard to tell. Okay, there's no way to be able to tell this unless we take it a step further. I'm going to copy and paste the sphere, hit T for scale, make it bigger. And now I'm going to, it's already a collider sphere, so I'm just going to say record the position, fast forward, record the position. Now we can see if those are, oh, they are individually being affected. Neat. So, those are being individually affected. Good to know, good to know. So, what we want to do is tangle these up a bit. And how should we do that? Not a simple task. So we've got, let's turn off the cloner and have it just be one of these again. I'm going to, yeah, I'll create a circle, change the orientation to be flat. I'm going to move it up here to be about where that circle is, shrink it down, offset it like that. And now I'm going to tell this sphere, which is actually the upper one, so I'm going to move it above here. I want to tell it to be some 4D tags align the spline. The spline will be the circle. Circle was not in the spot I wanted it to be, so I'm going to move it over there. And I am going to tell that spring that that is the initial rest length. So cool. So now we've got that. Now I want to animate this tag. We could use signal, but I'm not going to because signal has to be baked before MoGraph will acknowledge it. Record the position. Actually, I want this to all be linear. So I'm going to hit D, Command D, Control D, go to key interpolation and say linear. So now it's not going to be soft splines because I want these all to be nice and flat. Okay, back to position. Re-record that. Fast forward to the end. Set it to 360. Record that. So now, hopefully, it doesn't explode, and this can travel around in a nice little circle. Neat. So now it's traveling around in a circle. We put our circle also in that null because we want that all to be cloned, and those should all travel in their own little circle. Our orientation isn't quite right, so I'm going to grab our transform here and spin these all in so they start intersecting. And now they should all travel around in a little circle. No turbulence. Travel a nice little circle, and oh goodness, they're still exploding outward. No. Oh. No, I got rid of the sphere. I don't think it's... Yeah, there's no shape here, so that shouldn't matter. These springs are really finicky. I really don't like the springs, but the soft body splines are the only way to get like splines that don't pass through each other. So that's where this is challenging. I mean, I can't think of any way around using the springs to keep those linked because we need it to be soft body. They have to be. And if they're going to be soft body, the only way to stop them from falling is a spring, literally the only way. But they fly away, which is really frustrating. Because this would be so straightforward if that just worked. Like, if these didn't fly away for no good reason, I don't know why they would fly away. Like, these aren't intersecting, these circles aren't dynamic. The only thing that's dynamic is themselves and the other circles. So there's no reason those would just suddenly whip away. None that I can think of. Now, we can go into our dynamic settings, go to expert, and, like, really crank up the number of subframes, but I doubt that's going to do anything. Well, sort of did. They're still there. I'm going to crank that up even higher. Oh, okay. Well, they're holding on now, so at least, something. I'm going to try turning on the turbulence again and seeing if that maintains it as well. It didn't explode yet. The strength might be down, though. It is down. Let's set that to 55. Not bad. All right. Not horrible. We're getting a little something going on here. So, I think I want this to spin around twice. Is that even an option? Can you spin around twice? Go away, cloner. Oh, no, you can only do once. That's a little frustrating. Heck. Why don't we just use signal? It's easy enough to bake it. So I'm going to grab this top circle, and I'm going to add a signal tag, Greyscalegorilla signal tag. Throw on the current position on the sphere. I want to add some random noise on top of that. So the random noise will be, I'm not quite sure of our scale. Let's look at a cube. Pretty big. So that means we can probably safely set this to about 100. Speed's going to be a little high, so I already know that. I'm going to set down to 0.5. Let's just hit play. And there you can see it's wiggling around. I want more bias. Let's push this out towards the edges, 45. Little bit twitchy. I guess that's what a high bias will do for you. Maybe just crank this number up a little bit more. Go further. Wee. Interesting. Well, not horrible. Need to do the same thing on the bottom sphere, but probably will help to get a little chaos on both of them. That's going to, of course, shoot this bottom sphere up to where the current one is, but that's pretty straightforward. All I have to do is go back to the base and tell it to actually live down lower. And now they're already at these chaotic positions based on just the noise. In fact, I should probably give this noise a different random seed. And it would probably be a good idea to go to their base tab and kind of try and line it up a little bit with their initial points. A little hard to tell with this perspective. Close enough. Grab that one. Go down a little closer. Okay, they don't have to be perfect because now we just have to go back to those springs and set rest lengths. So now they are relinked at the current distances, which should be fine. And now it should be wiggling around all crazy. Give that a save. Hit play. Wiggling. Cool. And we also have the turbulence going. So now we have a bunch of independent strings all wiggling around, still connected. So hopefully with them twisting around like this, they're going to start intersecting and interacting a little bit, which they are not doing much of. But we might be able to fix that by going to our transform, changing their rotation. Yeah, there we go. They're getting a little bit tangled now. Well, and even here, like, okay, now it starts getting into harder questions here. So we've got a series of strings that will not intersect each other. Like they will get twisted up and loop and whatnot. So what starts happening, and it could be a little bit weird, and I wonder if we can even do this. I guess it could still be within their individual systems, but then we still need to get them out of their system, because these aren't just splines. There's always something, isn't there? Well, see, let me explain what the concept here is anyway. We're going to go back to this original helix I didn't delete for a reason, and let's turn off the cloner for a second, and we'll just deal with one. So we've got our actual wiggly helix, okay? Now, we can't really do anything with that. It's just going to be doing its dynamic thing and wiggling around. But we know it won't intersect the other lines, or geometry for that matter. So that's where the advantage there is. So now, if we were to take this helix and create a spline wrap, we've been using a lot of those these days. Drop that on our new helix, set it to Y+. And what do we want that to go on to? Well, we want it to go on to the spline. So now we're hiding our other spline. So now all we've got is our spline. But you'll see that our spline is twisting around. That is this one being deformed to match it. But that means we can actually animate this one. And I will do that with Signal, because I like Signal. Signal is going to animate 2. So we're going to grab our 2 parameter, drop that on here. And we're going to start at 0. We're going to end at 100. So now you'll see what's happening is we've got this one line twisting and then drawing itself on over the course of 90 frames. So, I don't know if it'll work, but I guess we could throw that in here. And now clone a bunch of them. No, see, okay, that's not going to work. Because once you combine helixes with cloners, it just isn't happy. So we can do 1. And obviously, this isn't very branch-like behavior right now, but there's a lot of settings we could do to start making it behave a little bit more like it. But what this ends up starting to happen is we start having to do this a lot more manually. So it's like, okay, we've got this nice rig here, and I'll throw this in along with that rig. But now what we have to start doing is manually copy and pasting, and that's always a little bit of a frustrating and or dangerous thing. The frustrating part comes in that we're going to have to do it over and over and over again whenever we make any change. And we'll obviously be making a lot of changes. So I'm at the time of 0. Move that null over a little bit. So now we have 2 of those lines. So now we have 2 different ones and 2 of these different guys getting drawn on. So now you see we actually have a branch growing, and it's happening very quickly. So I'd love to give ourselves some more keyframes. Why don't we do that? So we have 2 of these branches coming on. But now, of course, every change I have to grab both parameters. And now I have to say match timeline. So let's go up to 180. So now these are going to trace out and get all wiggly, but they won't pass through each other, and they are slowly growing. So we actually have some dynamic branches. Now, of course, our dynamics on this helix are abysmal. Like, it's all super crazy and fluid. A lot of that might be happening because of our turbulence. Like, if I rewind and turn off our turbulence, is it going to be, well, it's obviously different, maybe not better, but still very fluid. At least they do tangle up with each other, which is fun. And we actually didn't add any thickness onto it, which we totally should. So we can go to our... is it margin? I keep mixing up size increment and margin because I keep using both of them. I set it to 10, which is probably too much. If it explodes, it was too much. I think it exploded. Set down to 5. Didn't explode. Okay, cool. Now there should be a little bit of a distance between the 2 of them to get nice and wrapped up and tangled. Actually, getting very nicely tangled, even if it's all happening too quickly. So now it turns into going into our soft body settings and really maybe stiffening this thing up a bit. Let's try adding a stiffness of 1. I don't know what that'll do. We'll definitely slow down the chaos a little bit. We can add some more structure, which should very much stiffen this up. Yeah, they're a lot more stiff now. And I'm going to stop these bottom guys from wiggling around. So our bottom spheres, I'm just going to go ahead and delete signal from the bottom sphere. So they're not going anywhere. So this is just going to be static. And what's cool is this is all still happening live. But now there should be less wiggle happening here because those are static. And now it's all about them just trying to stretch up to there. So they're starting to get a little bit of growth going. So, okay, we still got a lot of chaos going there, and I wonder, like I want them wrapping around and twisting, but we also want that not to be wiggling around so much. So then it goes to, do we want to go to the helix, go to the helixes and start adding in like some dampening? So let's go overboard and add a 99% dampening and see what happens. A lot more reasonable than I thought we'd get. So that's actually, it's draining a lot of energy out from the scene. I'm going to go 99.9. Like I said, those numbers always have to be incredibly high. So this is just constantly sucking all the energy out, but they're still being forced to go to these points. Unfortunately, they're very stretchy, so it's still getting all that little lax bits down there in the bottom. I think structural is what should be stopping that. Right now we have dampening, and dampening is up relatively high. We can like drain lots of energy out from all of these systems. 75% of the energy from every single frame. They're obviously still drooping a lot. And the springs aren't like a 1-to-1, so they never quite catch up to it. So we could, keep in mind that we wouldn't actually be seeing those. Now, having done all that, it's all well and good. I'm actually going to delete one of them because I'm going to make a bunch of changes, and it's really easy to duplicate one. Why don't we actually get a little geometry on here to see if we're getting anything akin to what we're aiming for? So I'm going to create an end side. We're going to create a sweep. We're going to drop the end side and the helix into the sweep. Of course, it doesn't exist yet, so let's give ourselves some frames. It is going to be all super twisty like this, which is a little frustrating. We need a guide rail. I'm just not going to worry about that. And we can probably not worry about it by giving ourselves enough segments where it just looks round. So even if it spins and twists and breaks, we won't really see it. Keep in mind that would be a problem if we were trying to texture it. The sweep, I'm going to tell the end scale to be down so we get a nice little tentacle-y thing. Neat. And then we can turn off caps because that'll just make it run faster. I'm going to hide the spline wrap because no reason to be seeing it. So now we can see, okay, we get this nice little tentacle drawing upward. Still wiggling around a lot at the bottom. In fact, we could probably help that a little bit because right now we can grab this one now and then zero it out. Shift-C, Shift-C, PSR, zeros of that out. Pull this down just a little bit because I don't want them actually touching. And now I can grab that spring and reset its length. And I don't know if adding more stiffness on there will help or not. Let's add in 10 times, actually 100 times as much stiffness and see if it explodes. It didn't explode. It's still twisty, but at least it's kind of locked onto this location. So that's something. So now we actually have the geometry, so we can actually see that drawing on, but I still kind of want to hide that. So now we just see our nice little tentacle drawing out. Cool. So now we got that growth happening. And it's also happening in real time, so that's kind of neat. So now it turns into no cloner, maybe some turbulence. I don't know. It's really hard to tell with turbulence. Let's turn it on and see what this does. I want to get like a little more kinks going in there. You know what would help a lot here? Turning off gravity. I'm going to go Command or Control D. General dynamics. Gravity 0. So now it can just float in space. So now it's not going to be all droopy. Neat. All right, that's something. Okay, now we've done all that. Let's call this branch. Copy, paste. And I'm going to take this one and move it away a little bit because I don't want those in the identical positions, and then rotate it a little bit just so the random wiggles happening a little better. Why don't we add 4? So I'm going to copy, paste both of those, move both of them over a little bit, and spin them 180. So now we've got 4 things doing slightly different things. So let's see what we end up with, because all those should be individual lines that don't want to intersect. Now let's keep in mind that this geometry is probably a little fatter than we're telling to calculate, but they shouldn't be able to pass through each other. So now we've got 4 vines all growing, twisting around, but not passing through each other. Oh, look at this really nice twist we're getting up on that part. So something that would be pretty good to do here would be, yeah, see, this is where it's going to get complicated. But now we've got all of our different spheres here. So I want to grab the top sphere, random signal, and I want to randomize each of their individual noises. So I'm going to just type in num, and now each one has their own random seed. But we have to keep in mind that now we changed their initial condition, so I want to make sure to grab their initial springs. You know what? That's not true. You know what we should actually be doing? I should be grabbing these signal tags and having them animate on their strength. That would be a way better idea. So I can grab all of them, and at the beginning, they should be a strength of 0. And then at the, actually, it doesn't take long, like, 20 frames in, they should be strength of 100. And now the noise fades in. And now at the initial state, I can grab each of their springs, which is the topmost spring in each hierarchy, set initial length, and now they're all set like that. So now they're each individually moving, and they all start at their 0 position so that there's not that much distance in the rest length. So now with these each twisting around a little bit more, they might be able to tangle themselves up a little bit better. But let's keep in mind we're not seeing all the tangle because we're just seeing these the tentacle arms pulling up. How many polys are we dealing with? Well, not that many. It's not that bad. I think that is all working great. I just want to see more of them. And then probably, I would love to get less distance on them initially. So why don't we like unhide this helix? So you'll see that this actually isn't anywhere near the position it should be. So we're going to do this whole process again. And, at a certain point, it does turn into like, instead of changing all of them at the same time, just delete all of the copies. Go back to the original, and then grab the original. I want to unhide my helix. And I want the sphere to be, I want signal to put it in the proper spot, which is going to be 0, 0. Find the proper height, which is right there. And now that's the correct way of doing it. Now I can say set initial length. It is set to try and always be stuck there. And now signal will slowly wiggle around. You see it's being very tightly stuck onto that point. I could also add a lot more stiffness onto that, and hopefully this keeps it very tight. It gets a little, you see it immediately gets very twitchy up there. So let's try 10 instead of 100. Okay, less twitchy and definitely tighter. So that is trying to maintain that distance. Now you see it's actually pulling up and it's stretching it tight. I actually don't want it to ever stretch tight, but signal is really easy to make those kind of changes. In our noise, on our Y, it's going up and down. I'm going to say don't go up. You can go down, but you can't go up. So we're going left and right all the way. But then on Y, we only ever go down. So maybe that'll give us a little bit more twisty thing. So now that's being stuck very well. Our bottom is stuck very well. We get nice little tendrils going. There's still a lot of energy in it. And there's so many different ways we might be able to mitigate that. Well, first of all, like our turbulence is probably throwing a lot of that in. I kind of want that, though. In our helix, we already threw in a lot of linear dampening. I would actually think that would be the primary way of draining out the energy from this thing. So I'm going to try it even more. Hard to tell. I mean, it still just has that energy. I'm going to give it a pretty strong follow rotation and position. I don't know if it'll do anything, but let's find out. A little bit. But the last one I wanted to try, just for curiosity's sake, would be adding a simulate particle friction. So this friction, and I think this is all automatically being applied, right? I'm not crazy, am I? Forces exclude. Yeah, it's automatically applied. So now we have a friction, and this friction should be constantly draining energy out from all dynamics, and it should be doing it to every single point here. So I'm going to crank this up insanely high and see if we're getting a clear effect. And I'd say we are. We are clearly seeing that this is like getting drained of energy. So cool. Our friction is actually definitely a viable thing here. So then maybe it turns into like, okay, now we can maybe add a stronger turbulence. So there we go. Look at these kinks we're getting in it. But then we're getting our energy constantly drained back out again by our friction. So now it's a little bit more vine-like, a little bit more structural. And I look at that growth. That's starting to look really good. I really am starting to like that a lot. All right, neat. So that's working. Now what do we do? Well, we'd probably start making duplicates and see if we can get this actually twisting around. So we've got our nice friction, which is global. So I'm going to put that on the bottom, and now I can expand that. Is there anything worth hiding in groups? Nah, it's not too much. So I'm just going to copy paste, and now we can go and, like I said, move that over a little bit, and then we can grab both of them, copy paste, move them over a little bit. And now because we're dealing with this global kind of noise, I think we can just go and not worry about rotating them and just grab their upper signal tags, type in num, which is going to take their index and apply it. So like if I grab this top one, you'll see it'll be set to 0, and the next one will be set to 1. The next one will be 2, 3, 4. So now we hit play, and now we've got 4 of these guys going. So we got 4 different tentacle lines. Now, these are twisting around really nicely on top and hopefully getting tangled. The bottoms are a little uniform for me right now, but look, this growth is actually pretty great. I am really liking the way that's looking. I've never actually gotten anything like this working this well. That's looking great. Holy cow, guys. I should probably turn this into a real tutorial because this is working. Obviously starting to get a little bit slow, but keep in mind that we did tell our global dynamics to be calculating 55 times per frame. So this is actually pretty impressive for what it is. This is working really well. I'm going to save it and immediately save it as a new one so we can always go back to that step, which we know worked. Let's drop this down to half the amount, so hopefully, not 200 times the amount. So this might calculate twice as fast now. Keep in mind this is nowhere near real time. This is actually, we can't judge what we're seeing here for being accurate. Oop, looks like it did explode. So we still need that to be higher because right around here, boom, they shot away. So back to 55. Yeah, I'm totally digging that. These are growing really nicely. Let's see. I think maybe we want to edit those curves a little bit. First of all, I'm going to hide the helixes. All of them. And now we can jump into our sweep, 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 sweep. Do you know back in version 8 you couldn't select more than one object at a time? Madness. End scale, 100. Details. Details, scale down here, but go whoomp. Yeah, that's a little bit more what I was looking for. Yeah, just a little bit more substance to them, so we can more distinctly see them growing. Play. Now, unfortunately, we can't really deal with the individual thicknesses, because it's just like, oh, this vine has this thickness, and you see right here we're feeding it something fatter, so it's actually intersecting down here. Right around here, oh my god, those twists are so nice looking. They're so cool. So all this is making me think is we're getting really nice initial. We're getting eventually starting to twist up really well, which just makes me want to have this more tangled quicker. I can't think of like really good ways of doing that. I mean, we could have the helix. We could have the spines pre wrinkled, which would probably be a good idea. Like pre-twisted up a bit. I'm going to see if we can just make this twice as fast, which could be bad, but like these guys are gonna move around twice as fast, so hopefully we get twice as many knots. So we can't see them, but there's actually lines connected there, and these are getting tangled and twisted. So the initial growth is fine, and then as we start getting up here, we're starting to get them all twisted and tangled, and it's beautiful. Oh my goodness. I'm so happy. You guys have no idea how happy I am. This is why I do this show, because I get to learn things. Look at that. Look at that. They're all knotted up and dynamically moving around and wiggling. Like, oh my god, like the implications of some of the stuff you can do with this is really cool because like, let's go ahead and make a cube here. And I'm going to make a cube and I'm going to rotate it to some goofy angle. T for scale. Scale it down a bit. and let's just throw on one of these collider bodies. So I think initially it might make these explode outward. Oop, it did make it completely explode. So we can't actually have the cube there in the beginning. Or we can, we just have to have it grow. So signal to the rescue. Signal size. And I want to go from 0 to that size, yes. And I want it to happen quickly over like 20 frames. It could probably happen even slower, but now it's really tiny. So hopefully this can now grow. And now those didn't explode out because they weren't intersecting and then shooting out into space. But now this is having to deal with this box being here. So like that as a dynamic object, like this is going to have to grow around the box. It cannot get around it. And it's not like it's growing around it. It just can't intersect. So this could get pulled over and I could be like whacking it with this box. I mean, even potentially in kind of real time. Let's give ourselves a few more frames. So I should be able to like, I can't do it too quick, but I should be able to move this box around and, you know, have some influence over what's happening. Because this is all just really happening. Like these are actually getting tangled up. Like it's actually dynamically doing these pushes and pulls. Which is crazy. Look at that. Look at that happening. Now, at a certain point, like you can only twist and tangle up so much until we don't have enough points for it to compensate, or it pulls it too tight and it can't work. This is down near the base. It might be kind of cool. They might split in different directions. But yeah, that is working really well. Now, okay, so that's all working shockingly well. Now, all of the... Let's move on to like step 5 here. So there was like those shells happening. Well, there was that shell it broke through. And I'm just curious if we can have this dynamic system integrate into the next dynamic system. How do I put that? Oh, well, let's just go and let's just do it. I'm going to make it... Let's make it a platonic instead of a sphere, just to be a little different. And let's give ourselves some subdivisions. But I'm not going to go nuts on this. That might be nuts enough. So we're going to do that. And now I'm going to make that a soft body. Cloth. No, I'm not soft body. We're going to make it a cloth. So now that's cloth. So now what I'm curious about, and there's a really good chance this will not work. But if we can grab these sweeps and add a simulation cloth collider. Now, we always do this, but like I think cloth colliders have to have been made editable. And if that's the case, then this straight up won't work. Oh, okay, they haven't been made editable, and it is hitting it. Okay, cool. This continues to have potential. I'm going to move this cube, this cute little cube, straight up, because we don't want it messing with this. Okay, so they weren't editable, and it does seem to be colliding. Good. Now we can go to our geometry here, and forces, no gravity. That just means it'll pull up. So this will be weird, but maybe we do want gravity, but we want more iterations of stiffness. So I'll do 10 iterations of stiffness, and we definitely want to use tearing. So I'm going to do tearing at 155. So we can use tearing, but tearing you can't see until we've used a cloth surface. So we throw this in the cloth surface. Don't subdivide. Why not give us some thickness? Why not? A factor of 0, so it's nice and stiff. No idea what will happen. There is some gravity, and the fact that there's gravity probably means we should give it a ground. And the ground, I'm just going to steal a collider body tag. So let's hit save and then hit play. So let's go fall on the ground. It's pretty stiff, and it's holding. And now the vine is going to start hitting it. And at a certain point, oh, this is getting creepy. Oh, look at that. So now, based on our tear amount, it is now torn a hole into the cloth, and it's exploded outward. This poor This poor shape has exploded into a tentacle monster, and it's not doing well. Actually, that's amazing. I can't believe that these dynamic layers are all working perfectly here. Usually we have to like fight it every step of the way, but that is straight up working, and we haven't even made anything editable. Oh wait, I made that editable. I wonder if I had to make it editable. I don't know. Let's make another one and not make it editable. Although I'm pretty sure we do have to. Zero this one out, match it, drop it here, steal its tag, delete it. And what I do want to do is have more segments, tinier holes. Save it. It's going to run slower, but I don't think it's going to be like crash the computer slower. So let's hit play. Okay, it does need that to be editable. So I'll just make a copy of it and turn it off. And then make that editable. And now we can hit play. Let's see. Did I do something wrong? Or is it just... Okay, cool. I just need to hit play again. Now, because there's more polygons, it's actually not quite as structural, which is interesting. So we'd actually have to make it stiffer to be able to make that work. They're all popping out really well. They're popping out from the same hole, though. I kind of wanted to see them a little bit not in the same hole. So why don't we hide that for a second. And now we can just grab, say, this branch. I'm going to pull that one a little off to the right. And I'm going to grab this branch. This branch. Nope. Third time's the charm. Pull that a little off over there. So those are just separated a little bit. And hopefully they're still within it, which they are. So hopefully those are far enough apart where they don't all punch through the exact same hole. Let me rewind and hit play again because I think it punched a hole in right away, which was just remembering the previous iteration. So, yeah, they all kind of get pulled in there. It's slightly separate holes, but still not quite. We could probably, I mean, we could move them away where they definitely would work, but now they're torn in. Actually, look, there is two holes here. There's that one link working successfully there. There's a good chance we could probably throw a subdivision surface on that, but every once in a while that will break a calculation. You just never know. And we didn't add a Fong tag, which would obviously go a long way here. Let's just steal that Fong tag. Hit play. Yeah, okay, it still is doing the calculations even with the subdivision surface working. Eventually it just fell away. We would want to probably, well, and here's the problem is to make that stiffer, we have to just do more iterations, which I think it just means more calculation time because you can't have your stiffness go above 100%, which is a little frustrating. We can go easy on the gravity. Some gravity's good, but let's set to like half the amount. A little bit of global drag, 15%. No wind, none of that. No self-repulsion. That makes it go crazy slow. Flexion, I guess flexion is going to enable it to bend, so we can pull back on that. Mass, size, will shrink or grow it. Tear is where it's tearing. We could even make that higher. Let's go to 175, so it's going to have to push it harder before it tears. Let's make sure this floor is moved up to the maximum potential. In fact, we can grab this shape and rotate it. Can we? Oh, no, cloth doesn't let you rotate after it's been initialized, which is weird. But that's why now it'll fall less. It's a little stiffer. Let's go ahead and just give that a save. Oh, so we can't move that down. But what I was going to do is maybe grab all the branches. Hide that. Grab all the branches. And pull them all down closer to the ground. We just have to make sure we didn't go so far that they escape. Cool. So now hopefully it doesn't ever escape the bag. I want them to look like they're still in there. So hit play. There might be initial. Oop, yeah. See, there's that first pop, and for whatever reason, that's just a weird quirky. If I rewind, hit play again, it won't happen. Now there might have been some initial. Okay, see, this guy was a little bit intersecting when it popped in the initial geometry. So I'm just going to grab this cluster and move them all over a little bit. So I think every other time we hit play, it might like freak out a bit, and we have to rewind and let it play again. That's for the problems I thought we'd have trying to do any of this. I'm not going to complain about that. You see, the flexion seems to make it maintain its shape a little bit more. These are now very violently going to tear through it. And keep in mind that these tentacles are not reacting in any way to the bag. The bag has to react to the tentacles, but the tentacles are not reacting in any way to this because it doesn't see it back that way. I'm shocked that it's looking at it at all, so. Oh, super twisty there. This one doesn't want to get twisted up at all, but these are mega twisted. Neat. I don't even know what to add to this. Like, it's just working. You know what's great though is like I have my tutorial I need to post in like 2 weeks, and I didn't know I was going to make it on it. Now I think I'm going to make it on this. So you guys have a little preview. Nobody post any of this on your own. You can post something you made, but not how to do it. This is mine. I'm going to make this tutorial, make it big and fancy. Because this one's really fun. Oop, popped the bag, but now you can see how thick it is. Neat. Get a little cube grown up there. Now there are still other problems. Like these are just the tentacles, like we talked about, and there still are probably flipping and twisting all over the place. So if we were to try and put some sort of dynamic texture on here, not even dynamic, but any kind of texture that has any kind of texture to it, we'd see it flipping all over the place. If we were to change this display mode to this, my assumption would be that these guys are going to be actually with the friction. I'm curious now if that would be the case. So now let's find out. It will be stretching as it goes, which is a tough one. Because as it animates up, it's like we need to feed it more texture, which is just a fact. I'm going to turn off this cloth so we can get it running a little bit faster. And we can grab maybe a generic, or just grab a quick, instead of making the texture, I'm just going to go to Greyscalegorilla Texture Kit, go to Natural, and do we have any kind of bark? I don't even know if we do, but we probably have something that'll work here. That's a weird looking one. Wonder who initially made this. This could be Beeple, it could be Rob. It is kind of a bark texture though. It's using this placement. I don't want that. So yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw it. I'm going to make sure to throw it onto an actual sweep. And we're going to say apply. I guess let's let this play out so we can actually see them. And you should see right away that as these are stretching outward, the texture which is not spinning around, although every once in a while we might see a sudden flip, which would be the problem. But you'll see that these are growing, and it's just simply stretching the textures out. And that looks really nice overall, but we don't want them stretching and stretching and stretching. So what that means is that we need to be feeding it more tiles as it goes up. Now, luckily, this is all driven via signal, which means we know exactly the way it's growing. And it's growing based on inside the sweep. Inside, we'll just start with this top one. We'll do one and maybe copy it over. So inside the spline wrap, this is the transition of it growing. And in fact, it almost makes me want to speed it up in the beginning a little bit there. I guess it maybe should even be a little bit more linear, but I'm going to select it and let's just say linear. So that's going to be one continuous growth, okay? And it takes 180 frames. But what this means is I can actually take this and copy it over to our sweep. And now, instead of driving the way the spline wrap is being applied, we can take that same signal tag and change it to, and unfortunately I need to fast forward this a bit so we can, I guess I can just do that, yeah. We got to figure out which one of these parameters we need. So it's, okay, it is indeed this parameter. So it is either the tile or the length of V, because those are essentially the same parameter, just named two different things. So all we have to do is figure out what should this look like at the end and what should it look like at the beginning. Now, it does look like the texture is starting here at the bottom instead of the top, which is probably the case unless we were to invert our spline, which is probably doable, actually. I can probably just hit reverse spline. It's going to get fat on the top, except now all we do is go here and invert that by flipping it. Oops. By mirroring it. Cool. So now we should have the same thing, but now I think our texture will be stretching from the bottom, which is exactly what we want because the tip should never change. So now we know it ends at 180. So right at this time, we want it to look perfect. So what looks good? That looks good. Tiling it 3 times. So we're just going to say, actually we can do this now. We can say tile V is being driven by this. So at the end, which is 180, we want this to be at 3. Cool. So now what we need to do is rewind it. And you see as it's shrinking, and I'm not surprised that popped because I'm just dragging through. And I guess we can kind of guess this based on what it looks like when it finally pops out here. I wonder if even that is an accurate number. Like maybe we just give it a little bit over 1, and let's just hit play and see how it looks as we stretch. Because what it's doing is it's constantly generating new texture at the bottom. So as it stretches upward, it should be kind of maintaining the length. Seems pretty solid. You see those twists right there? Now we can actually see those twists I was worried about, or it's spinning, spinning, spinning. We really don't want that, but there's no... I really wish there was like an end-all solution where it's just like, oh, don't spin. But you need like rail splines, and rail splines are such a pain. I don't know what the just automatic good solution of that is. Now I want to copy this texture tag to our other sweeps, but we do have to relink it. So I'm going to say drive that parameter, copy it again, drive that parameter, copy it again, drive that parameter. Did I do that right? I'm driving the parameter, but did I link the right texture? Oh, I also have to link the texture here. Boop. Okay, cool. So now each of those should be kind of properly getting their texture grown along them. And to a degree, it's almost like I would almost think that we'd want them to not be perfect. We'd want them to be stretching a little bit or squishing a little bit, just a little something to give it that feeling of growth. But, I'm not complaining about this. Zoom up. Like, these textures look a lot better closer up, but this bump might be crazy. Actually, it's a very mild bump, surprisingly, but it does have a normal map. And that might be very strong. So we're going to go easy on the bump. Yeah, it makes it a little smoother. And then, I like it being maybe a little bit more beechwood type, so we'll multiply it by that color. Doesn't take much. Very yellow. That's better. And it didn't originally have displacement. We could turn on some displacement. It does have some poly displacement. Very mild. What's the point of having tiny, tiny, tiny displacement? You want a little more. Yeah, that's kind of a thing. Now, they will be twisting around, but why don't we, just for the sake of it, let's wrap this up. And we're already over time, but I was having a lot of fun, so I wasn't worried about it. Let's turn our cloth back on, because it's just neat to look at. There's not really textures on it. I'll just throw that. Nothing fancy. It should run nice and quick. Now, I think we do want to make our spheres invisible, and here's what I'm actually going to do. I can go and search for sphere, and now they're all there, and I can grab all of them and just go hide, hide, and now they won't render, and I can clear that out, and now we're back, and I was able to change all of them at the same time. Very useful thing when you're doing these kind of iterative copy and pastes things you have to do over and over again. Give that a quick save. And it'd be a very good idea to add some lighting, but I don't want to make the render take too long. Soft shadow. And then we'll go a little bit easy on the shadow. And then I'll just create an ambient light. Keep it simple. Little bit of blue. Not very bright. Ambient. And then it's kind of fun to make this one a little too bright. 125 maybe. With a hint of yellow. There we go. Something. And why not? We'll throw in a bit of a background. Branch background? Weird. Maybe not. Maybe not that. But maybe. Make a copy of it. And we will go to normal and we'll make it very pale. Nope, 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 nope. Background. Yeah, neat. I'll even throw that on the ground. It's something. It's something. And we're not moving the camera or anything, so we'll just do that. Oh, actually, if I set the... if we make the plane a little bigger, and we can set that projection to frontal, then I guess the shadow will probably fall off here, but we could tell this to be a compositing, say composite background, and now that should... Oh, I put in the wrong thing. So that, see, that becomes invisible, and the only thing that falls off is the shadow. But now I should be able to just hit T for scale and scale that until it's beyond there. And now we've got like an infinite floor linking to background, and it's still flat and frontal. That would not work if we were moving the camera. Shadows are getting a little weird on here. I think the Phong tag, just the way we're subdividing that's a little weird, so I'm not going to worry, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. Actually, I'm not going to worry about it at all. Let's just save our render. All frames, we'll probably stop it before that. Don't worry about saving. Low resolution's fine. I just want to see this go quick. Saved. Render. Oh, that one finally finished. Oh, it's doing the pre-explode thing, so we probably have to... Do I have to send it twice here, or do we have to do a rewind proper? That's a curious thing. Okay, you see it still explodes. So once again, this is just kind of a weird little bug. But I bet if we hit play, let it play through a few frames, it'll explode. It's actually kind of dangerous. Okay, see, it did explode, and now when I hit rewind. So now I've done that, I bet I can hit go to the picture viewer, and I bet it'll work. Hello, magical cube. That's slowly sinking due to the low gravity. And I think it'll collapse quite a bit before we ever see the branches start pulling out. Oh, I guess it's still rendering really quick, so that's good. Pop. Now, the more subdivisions we give that shape, then the better those holes will look. Because at a certain point, they just cease to exist. So when a tear happens, it'll just like suddenly open up a space. These guys are all moving outward a lot. I guess they don't twist up until near the end. It's rendering quick enough where I'm fine letting this just run through for a few minutes because it's looking pretty cool. Now, like I said, the only thing, the thing that we didn't, the problem that's here that we didn't solve, and I guess if I try and make a proper tutorial out of this, I will have to solve, will be the textures spinning. And it's not the texture spinning, it's the entire sweep rotating its orientation. And yeah, I just don't know. I don't know what the solution to that's going to be. We could potentially get some rail spines, but I've found even rail spines sometimes do some weird things. So like I would have loved to have made this like a complex clone setup, like a bunch of cloners, and we can make as many of them around as we want, but it just didn't work. So at a certain point, like to get these more dynamic rigs, I've been finding that you just have to like brute force, like make one of them for real and then give it its neighbors. But seeing these guys like all twisted up and like kind of behaving as one thread, these are all and now at their full length, so they won't be growing anymore. But they will keep wiggling and maybe twist up a bit. And I guess the string is still quite stretchy, so there's going to be that bit of variation, which we're just not going to be compensating for at all. At a certain point, like depending on our subdivisions and the number of points we have, like these might just like rip through each other. So you'd have to like make sure you have the proper length. Like these are so twisted that I wouldn't be surprised if at some point like this one just went pop and then went through it. Top one finally looks like it's twisting in a little bit. So well, clearly we stopped growing at 180, and we have to keep in mind, especially with that reference we were looking at, like these are very long. Um, and I have no idea if this is in any way kind of what they did there. Like you could probably do a very simple animation of these guys all just kind of tangled up and then sweep those along another spine that's traveling along another one. So kind of like the inverse of what we're doing here. Would probably be another viable route. Although, I don't know. I think this is actually the route. But we have to make these strands a lot longer. And I don't know if any of these were like ever branching out a child. I don't think they were actually. But I have no idea. There's no way I can think of that you could branch out a child from this. Because these springs don't keep anything quite tight enough. So you could link one spline to another spline's point and then sweep it off at that perfect moment. But I don't know how well you could spring one spline to point, one spline's point to another spline's point. Might work, might not. This is almost done rendering, so we'll just let that finish. It looks like it might have even passed through themselves, like I said they would. And there's ways around that. If we gave it more length, probably less stiffness, more calculations per frame. But let's see what we got here. Oh, creepy. Yeah, it's working quite well. I want to see. I'm looking this time to see if they when and where they pass through each other, because it's quite hidden. They didn't seem to actually. One of the twists, in an interesting kind of way, travels downward. Like, see this twist? It's moving down, down, down. So I thought that the twist that I thought might have popped through actually just kind of traveled down the length. And every time we randomize the seed, we'll be getting a completely different animation here. Now, I didn't render this at a high enough resolution to really see the detail of these. You can see them kind of twisting a little bit. They're not doing like full flips, but they're definitely like doing that kind of thing. And I think that is the great challenge to solve here, because it's always been like weird gimbal lock and rotational and rail spline based stuff that can just be tedious and frustrating. And I gotta see if I can find any way around it. But this is a neat technique. I have not seen this kind of thing in Cinema 4D, where we kind of have these nice living, dynamic, art directable vines, splines, tentacles, whatever you want them to be. Those will just knot forever up there if we let it keep going. I'm just going to stare at this for a little bit because it's really neat. Let's see. Well, other things things are slightly frustrating, but maybe not, especially if we go and look at the reference. Like, you see these are not, they maintain a somewhat consistent thickness all the way through. You see the thickness right there is pretty much the same thickness right there. So we actually have ours getting fatter all the way along it, but if we made it a little bit more consistent with just the tips being a little bit thinner maybe, then this intersection happening in the lower levels where it's fatter than the spline allows, that would be good. I really wish we could map the spline to be thicker and thinner as it goes up and down. I guess that could be a feature request to Maxon. But I cannot think of any way around that by any means. So that's just not a thing. And the fact that we were getting, like, until we put this bag in there, we were actually getting really good pretty good viewport feedback as far as the dynamics, considering how much is happening. I guess at the end of the day, it's just a couple splines and springs, but like the end result, can't argue with that. Looks good. Looks pretty dang good. I'm just kind of basking in this technique working. So many things you can do with it. And what's neat too is like all those little spheres that are traveling around up here, all those spheres could be put into a null as a group. So you could get that like randomness happening, but then also like animate the bigger group. So it's like, oh, lots of randomness, but then a bigger, smoother randomness where they're all moving together or traveling through space. Let's see. Let's say if you wanted these to be more art directed, where they're like, we could probably have a big sweep. Like, imagine a big invisible tube that let's say we wanted this, like let's say this cube wasn't here, and we wanted a big tube to kind of go over here and then over here. If the splines were initially inside of that space, then they could be trapped within that space, and even that could like move around and undulate a little bit. So you could even art direct like how these are going, where they're going. I wish I'd made the resolution a little higher on either the texture or like bigger on the texture, or render this out a little bit higher, because it's really hard to tell what these textures are doing. Yeah, okay, well, I've started out that enough times, although I will save it into the folder. Images, history, renders, right click, save as, still image, animation, TIFF, QuickTime, animation, H.264. There might be better than that, but that's just what I've been using for a while. Branches. Holy cow. Let's jump into. Okay, that's saving in the animation. Let that finish. Make sure that this file is saved. Go back to the chat and see what you guys are talking about. We're not going to tackle any more questions because we're already over. But that was fun. Looks like you guys have been going for a while. Let's see. Anyway, I can ask for a future request tutorial. Yeah, it looks like you're new. But that would be, yeah, it's just doing the live stream. You throw it in there, and I pseudo randomly click on links just to hopefully get to everybody at different times. Yeah, just lots of good conversation going in here. Yeah, join in the Slack channel. Let's see. Yeah, those tentacles are fun. And it's a completely different technique. Although I guess in my last one, the meat tutorial, or the guts rather, we did use splines and springs, but I feel like this is pretty different. Yeah, so thanks everybody. I need to go eat some lunch because I'm pretty hungry. Let's watch it one more time, and then I'm going to go. Yeah. Oh, and you know what's neat is like those don't have to be branches. Those could be. We could probably be cloning onto those helixes, and they could be like little robot segments, or and obviously we're just running this along a helix, so that could actually be a pre-modeled like octopus tentacle, or there's probably a lot of different materials and meshes that could probably be, which would be pretty neat. Not to mention you could just go straight sci-fi and still have them kind of be branches. But that was really fun. Thanks for the awesome questions, guys. We got to tackle a bunch of really neat things. I can't even remember all the ones we tackled. What did we do today? Oh yeah, the aerodynamic whaley, a bunch of branches. We got the pillars of creation going. Like, there we go. That was super neat. Got to make that from pseudo scratch, since most of that's just based off of an image. We got the scales working. So yeah, we had some good ones today. So this is the third to last show. In fact, it's kind of over. So there's going to be next week and the week after, and that will be the end of season 2 of AskGSGs. So that we'll be wrapping it up for the summer, trying to focus on some other things. But thanks so much, everybody. I will see you guys next week and in the Slack. So goodbye.